Okay, hello there. Welcome back to yet another talking video. And yeah, here I am in late April. Yeah, this has been a long and busy month for me. Some exciting things along the way, and some other things that were not so happy. But I've made it through, and I still have some videos to share here on YouTube, and this would be one of them. And yeah, I wanted to talk on this subject today, and it's not quite the same thing as I'm not perfect is no excuse, but rather this is on not falling into another kind of thought. And yeah, I think we may see this especially among younger people, where there are younger people who feel like they are so powerful and they feel invincible and they feel like nothing can hurt them. And what happens is that there are people who play with dangerous risk. And, well, playing with dangerous risk and feeling too powerful and feeling invincible can definitely lead to a really bad outcome. And, this was inspired from two driving stories from which I was a passenger in a car a number of years ago. And I would like to share those two driving stories here. And, well, when we go back to 2012, I remember one time in that year, I was a passenger in a car, and it was just me and one other guy. The guy was driving, and, well, things were nice at first, but then I noticed at one point the driver had one hand on the steering wheel and he had another hand on his cell phone. And this guy was texting and driving at the same time. And when I noticed that, I remember feeling nervous because at that point I had already heard of the dangers of texting and driving and how it can go very wrong and have a really bad outcome. And, well, the statistics are there that texting and driving is really, really dangerous. And yeah, it can result in a driver feeling too distracted and they run into another car, and you could really seriously injure yourself or other people, or even worse. And, you just do not ever want to feel like you're so powerful enough or invincible enough to where you think you can get away with it with texting and driving. And we could say the same thing about another driving story a few years later. In 2017, I remember I was a passenger in a bus, and, well, this trip was from Cincinnati to Red River Gorge. And, well, we all had a nice time at Red River Gorge that day where we were outside and hiking. But then on the way back to Cincinnati, I remember the moment where the driver of the bus had one hand on the steering wheel and another hand on a professional camera. And he was taking pictures of certain things as we were driving by them while on the highway. And again, that was playing with dangerous risk, feeling too powerful and invincible there. And I remember there was one girl on that bus who said out loud to that driver, "Isn't that really dangerous what you're doing, taking pictures and driving at the same time?" And unfortunately, the driver just kind of blew it off and did not want to be corrected. And, you know, that moment just stays with me too, because, it was putting all of us on the bus at risk, and it was putting other drivers at risk. And yeah, that was a time where the driver really needed to be corrected, and he needed to put that professional camera down because he was driving a vehicle. And yeah, those two stories really stand out to me, with being a passenger in a car and there was a driver who just felt too powerful and they felt invincible. And I would just encourage everyone to be smart when they are driving a vehicle. And if someone is ever trying to reach out to you while you are driving, if someone sends you a text message, then you can always wait until you get home and then respond to them that way. You can always do that. And yeah, that's safer than, feeling too powerful or invincible or playing with risk. And well, really, when I say do not feel too powerful or invincible, or do not play with dangerous risk, this can also apply to other things in life as well, not just driving. You know, again, among a lot of younger people, I think really in high school and college, how often do we hear of young people who are going through with stupid and dangerous kind of dares? And those kind of dares can really injure someone or even result in the death of someone. A lot of people play with stupid dares. um you name it, there's a lot of them out there. And while there is the problem of driving a vehicle after you've had a few beers or more, and well, you do not ever want to fall into the lie of, well, you've only had one beer or half of a beer and you're only buzzed, as they call it. You're only buzzed, so you can still drive a vehicle. Well, no, there's still a risk there as well, because buzzed driving is still drunk driving. And then, with romantic relationships, I really applaud and cheer everyone out there who wants to be safe with their decision making with romantic relationships, and waiting until they get married to start a family with some kids. But you have to be careful as well with certain people out there who may try to push some lies on to you with relationships like that. You know, they may try to say to you something like, well, you don't want to risk having a baby before you're married, but there are some other ways to enjoy physical pleasure with other people which will not result in a baby. You can still do that before you're married. Well, the thing is, there can still be a lot of consequences there, and one thing can lead to another, and then you would end up in big trouble. And You just do not want to feel too powerful or invincible with all of the decisions that you make. You do not ever want to think that nothing can hurt me, nothing can hurt me, because with how things are in this world, yeah, bad choices can lead to harm and consequences. And, well, I know it was a movie, but it can apply to real life where, there was somebody who started to feel too powerful, and then his actions, where he felt too powerful and he also fell for the lies. It happened where someone eventually paid for his bad decision making. And that would be from Star Wars, the prequels. And yeah, the character is Anakin Skywalker, who became Darth Vader. And yeah, we see it where Emperor Palpatine was saying some things to young Anakin, and there were definitely some things that were lies. And then it happened where Anakin thought that his wife was going to die, and she was never going to die. Those visions were actually just fake. They were a trick from the Emperor. But what happened is that Anakin fell for the lies from Emperor Palpatine, and then he started to feel too powerful. And, there were so many dark things that happened in Star Wars Revenge of the Sith, where Anakin killed a lot of people, and Anakin's wife lost the will to live. And we see it on Mustafar, the planet with all the lava on it, where Anakin and Obi-Wan are in that lightsaber duel. And at one point, Obi-Wan jumps off that floating platform onto the higher ground, and we hear that now well-known exchange of words. "It's over, Anakin. I have the high ground." And Anakin responds with, "You underestimate my power." And so Anakin, in that moment, who was feeling too powerful and he was twisted by the really dark lies, Anakin jumps up and he lost that battle. And, we see it at the end of that movie in Revenge of the Sith, where Anakin feels a lot of physical pain and emotional pain because he fell for the lies of the world, and then he was starting to feel too powerful. And yeah, it was just a really sad thing that happened with him, and it is a really sad thing that happens in real life, where in this world, in this reality, that people fall for lies that sound good, and then they start to feel too powerful and they think nothing can hurt me. And, that's when people suffer from really bad choices. But I hope, as always, with what I've said so many times in these videos, I hope that you can have the strength to, you know, do good and do right, and, just always be strong in, you know, choosing things that are good and will not hurt you, and walking away from the bad. And don't worry if it costs you some popularity points or some friends. You just continue to have the strength to do right and do what is good, and to not fall for the lies of the world, and do not feel too powerful or invincible, and do not play with dangerous risk. But I hope you can always do what is right, and that, you can make it to my point with where I am now, and you can feel pretty happy with your life. I just wanted to share all of that today. It has been on my mind for a little while, and I hope that all of this has made sense. And yeah, this video will be here in the playlist with the other talking videos. So, thank you again for listening to this video today. Stay well, be strong in doing what's right, and I'll see you all again for another talking video really soon. Thank you.